Whenever you decide to play a new game for the first time, what is it about this game that caught your attention in the first place? Is it the fourth or fifth installment of a long-lasting series? Is it the best rated game by a specific person or group of people? Is it the presentation of the game, the genre, the developer, or maybe it's the stunning visuals? It's no lie that the progression curve of how visuals in video games have developed looks something like this. A straight linear uprising. Video games are getting prettier and closer to real life when you look at video games from, let's say, the start 2000s to what we now have today. I of course know that it isn't all video games that have or stride after hyper-realistic graphics. I mean, if you just take one look at the itch.io game page, then you will see hundreds if not thousands of low poly, PS1, pixel and other video game art styles. And even though some of these developers may have the tools it takes to make a super realistic game when it comes to the visuals, it might not be their goal to make a super realistic game. Because making a realistic game is difficult, time consuming and most often pretty expensive. And even when a developer has access to all of these things, they will still make a pixel art game if that is the main idea. And it's the same thing if you're making a classic Metroidvania game, a cartoony survival game, a drawn fish game and the other 120 art styles you can make a game in. What I am trying to say with all of this is, we like it when video games are visually stunning and closely resemble real life. But we also really like nostalgia and uniqueness. And that is also the reason why we make those visually unimpressive games. So we can experience a certain type of game in a visual genre from like our childhood. This is also the reason why I think it's a bit of a shame that some AAA companies sometimes focus on and use too many resources on making a HD version of an old title only for them to charge you like, actually no. I'm not going to go down that route for this video. But this is sadly a trend of making video games that some big companies have decided to focus on. But then again, if I like a certain game, then I will also play that remastered version of said game because I like the original, and this topic is slowly turning more stupid the more I talk about it. But to my surprise, it's actually not only the very big gaming companies that are putting all of the energy into making visually stunning games. It's the small developers too. To show this, I have two similar but also very different examples, with the first one featuring Roblox of all things. And before I show you any of these clips, I have to warn all of you that they are very gory and graphic. So if you have trouble looking at that type of stuff, then skip to the timestamp on the screen. So if any of you are either familiar with Counterblocks or Arsenal, then you also know that those games aren't exactly visually stunning or the reason that they got so popular. But as time has moved forward and graphics have evolved, we now have stuff like this in the making. Like, what is this? This looks insane if you compare it to the Roblox standard. And if you look at solo models, you can come across all of these things. I have no words for this. Just unbelievable and very impressive. For the second example, I have a game called Bodycam. Now, this game is not visually great because of its score, but because of its super realistic environment, characters, and weapon design. This to me is the most realistic game I have ever seen. Everything from the way you move around and shoot to the sounds you can make whenever you do an action just screams real life. And this game, when it was developed, was apparently made by a 17 and 20-year-old. That is just insane, and I do note that the game is only this realistic because of the Unreal Engine 5. But for two people to make a game this visually stunning is a thing to be admired. Now, with the game still being in early access, it of course has its problems. Like not being able to load into servers because all of them are full. But that doesn't take away from the breathtaking visuals. I mean, just look at it, and if I keep quiet for a moment, just listen to it. I am certain that if I showed this game to my dad, he would for a certain amount of time believe that he was looking at a real recording. So is this it? Have I made my point that a game doesn't need to be beautiful in order to be good? Not quite, because I think that there is something special about a game that can both be very simple, weird, and to some degree ugly, but also a very immersive and fun game. That game is 5 Shows at Wario's. Now when you hear this title, I assume that you fall under one of two categories. One, you have either played or at least heard of this game because you like FNAF fan games. 2, you have absolutely no idea what this game is, and as I'm saying all of this, you are probably questioning all of the visuals playing in the background and why they look like that. And for those of you in the second category, I'll quickly go over what this game is and what you do in it. Now, 5 Shows at Wario's is a FNAF fan game created by the developer www.wario. And this game is the 5th or 6th in the series. I'm actually not quite sure about that. Your one objective throughout this game is to escape from this purgatory of sorts by making your way through shows and days in multiple places. A pretty weird main objectives that only makes a bit of sense if you have played all of the other titles. Now, is this important for the video? No, because I will only be focusing on one of these escapes you make throughout the game. And it's actually the very first one, being in the theater. Now, in order to escape the theater, you have to complete 5 shows with increasing difficulties until you have enough hearts to make it through the final show. These 5 shows are named as followed: The Cellar, Cooking with Emma, Playing with Power, Safety Terror, and A True Lie. You can pick and play these shows in whatever order you want. But instead of talking about the mechanics for each show, let's instead take a look around and take in the scenery. Now, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that this game has somewhat of a unique art style. One that you might for a moment misinterpret as the real world. Once we load into the main hub where all of the shows are, it once again looks like real life if we remove the UI. And if we then go into the first level called the cellar, we are greeted with a pretty realistic cellar. So what's the catch here? Yes, the game uses still images that look like they were taken with a real camera. But if the gameplay is realistic, then what's so special? Oh, it's not realistic. It's simple? I don't know if this was the type of gameplay you were expecting to see. But this is one of the reasons why 5 Shows at Wario's is a special game. Because it manages to blend real life images together with simple gameplay mechanics in a very good way. Is it appealing to the eyes? Absolutely not. But the combination of these two visual aspects makes a weirdly horrific and disturbing game. And it's the same story with all of the other shows. They all have that still real life background photo, along with very simple gameplay objectives and mechanics. Now, I understand if you're not exactly hooked on playing this game after having seen some gameplay, but that's okay. Because I'm not here to promote this game to any of you. But I will say that this game, much like a lot of other FNAF fan games, is best experienced if you play it for yourself. And on the topic of other FNAF fan games, I might as well cover the most important thing about these games. Because what is a horror game without its scary enemies or mascots in this case? Well, it's rarely scary without them, and 5 Shows at Wario's have its unique and scary mascots. But just like the art style and gameplay mechanics in this game, the characters also don't follow the general art direction that most FNAF fan games tend to use. Because instead of trying to make these ghosts look as realistic as possible, the developer decided to make these things. Now, the thing that probably comes to mind for most of you first timers when you see these ghost designs is the question: Are those twisted Mario characters with teeth? For those of you wondering if this is a joke, I promise you that these are the actual enemy designs made by the developer. So your next question might be, how can these twisted Mario characters in a very simple game ever be scary? Because of immersion. Now I think that the official FNAF games, along with most of the popular fan games, are very good at making immersive environments and mechanics. This is primarily due to the fact that you are for the most part trapped in a very little room that you can't escape from. And when you then introduce all of the animatronics that are slowly making their way towards your room, you end up creating this tension that keeps on building until you either get jump scared or beat the night. And it's kind of the same thing in 5 Shows at Wario's. But because of the multiple minigames you have to beat in order to win, you get immersed into this game in a totally different way. Sure, one of the minigames called Playing with Power is the only minigame that follows the general FNAF formula of surviving until 6 AM. But the other 4 are totally different. And this is where the rough and kind of disturbing ghost designs come into play. Now, because of their unique appearances that blends both real life and fictional things together, I think that these are the only character designs that could ever make a game that looks like this scary. Sure, you could add the most terrifying FNAF or horrific character that you have ever seen, but it just wouldn't work for this game. The only type of character that could make this game scary aside from the main character designs are those creepy PNG images you can find online, because they actually fit into the setting. So it doesn't matter if your character designs aren't holding up to the very well made or very realistic standards that we might have come to expect. Because if you can make a scary setting that fits with your character designs and gameplay, then you can make a pretty or very scary video game. And it's the same thing when it comes to other video game genres. Because even though beautiful and realistic games are very inspirational and admirable, it doesn't automatically mean that they are good or fun to play. It's all about balancing gameplay together with presentation and immersion, especially when it comes to horror games. Because no matter how realistic we make a horror game, it won't be scary if it isn't unique and disturbing. Horror is only horror because it gives a life to the things we fear and don't think of in our daily life. If these were normal character designs from every Nintendo game featuring Mario and his friends, do you guys still think that we would call them scary if they had looked like this from the beginning of their creation? Five Nights at Wario's is, in my opinion, only a scary game because of its characters and setting. And I only think that the game is good because of the gameplay and unique immersion I experience while playing it. But that's enough for it to be a good game. It ticks off all of the things that, at least in my opinion, makes a game worth playing. It's weird because I can't say that I'm very impressed with the game when I put it up against all of the other games I like. But I still think that it's worth playing just as much as my favorite game. And I think that's why I can and like playing so many different video games. Because if a game can make me immersed into its setting, characters and gameplay in an enjoyable way, then it doesn't matter what the game looks like or plays like, because it will still give me the experience I am looking for while playing. It will still leave me satisfied despite its looks or gameplay if I had a good time playing it. So what can you take away and learn from this video? It's pretty simple. Give every video game a chance if you are interested in it. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't listen to others and their opinions on a certain game, because you can spare yourself from a very bad video game experience by listening to another person's experience with that game. But I think that instead of you spoiling a whole game for yourself by watching someone else play through it because of you being unsure if the game is good or not, just watch a tiny bit of that gameplay and then make the decision whether to buy the game for yourself or just keep on watching the person playing it. I really hope that didn't sound too demanding just now, because I am not here to say how all of you guys should play video games. I am just here to talk about the way I look and play video games for your entertainment. And if you then learn something from the way I play video games, it's just a plus in my book. And with that said, I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you have any ideas for the next, then please leave a comment about it down below. If you want to watch one of my other videos, then click on the screen. Remember to leave a like and a sub, and until we meet again, bye bye!